So, how do witches go about identifying and finding other witches who may not know that they're witches yet or who may not have made it to the coven? And I think this answer is a lot simpler than some of the other issues that come around in American Horror Story Coven. And the important thing is to have a Supreme that cares about doing that. And one of the main jobs of a Supreme is to ensure that her coven continues on. And this is something that, because Fiona neglected in doing, by the time we get around to American Horror Story season 3, the coven is so depleted that there are only maybe like 5 or 6 girls in the house. So, number one, you must have a Supreme who cares about prioritizing the efforts to identify and find other witches. And if you pay attention to Cordelia in season 3, you'll see that she actually watches a lot of news. She reads a lot of newspapers. In fact, I think that's how she found Amy. I think that was the pyrokinetic witch's name, who had been accused of arson. But Cordelia had figured out that there was something not right about that, and she went to go and meet with her. This is also how they found Misty Day. Not only did they feel her to an extent, but they saw her on TV. And so, in the case of Dollhouse, you can imagine that in 1961, a lot of women going missing likely has a bigger impact in the 1960s than it probably does today. So that would have been big news. And Natchez, Mississippi is about 3 hours roughly away from Louisiana, and the girls had been going missing from all over the place. So I think it would have caught the attention of the then Supreme, or Anna Lee Layton. So I also think that it's important to make efforts to go and retrieve those girls. And so in certain cases, it appears as that the girls can put out a magical signature, which is something that a good Supreme or maybe other members of her coven can pick up on, and that can help draw them to the location of the witch. But ultimately, it seems as though there is some magical ability to do this for a witch and her Supreme, but I think a lot of it just comes from, watching your environment, looking at the news, reading articles, really being aware of what's going on around you. And I think that's what makes a good Supreme and a good coven overall. But in addition to having a Supreme that prioritizes these efforts, I know that witches are also able to use tools like divination, such as when Zoe went looking for Madison, or I imagine that they can also use things like scrying. But I think a lot of people really want there to be some sort of cerebro type machine that they use to pinpoint other witches, like Charles Xavier does in X-Men. But witches have a lot of methods of doing so, but in order to really effectively do that, they must have a Supreme, or at least a witches council that cares about bolstering those numbers, and they have to create the efforts to go and retrieve those witches. So I think it's actually really easy. Overall, you just need a good Supreme, and you can use the other magics at your disposal, whether that be divination, sensing, scrying. I think it's actually pretty simple. And obviously, watch the news and read newspapers. But if you think that I'm missing something, please let me know in the comments, and I'll hope to see you in another video.